and welcome to Dharma Sunday on our gratitude weekend. At least I'm trying to think of this period as a period of gratitude. And we're going to start in our usual way with Dharma Sunday. We're going to start with some practice together. And this today in our practice, I'm going to we'll do some basic settling and just relaxing, being present. And then I'm actually going to give a short guided visualization meditation. So if you haven't done visualization practice before, this will be a little bit different, but it's in line with what I want to share later on in the morning. So I invite you just to jump in and enjoy. Very simple visualization practice. And if you're wondering kind of what the sort of the mechanism of visualization is about, with visualization practice, it's a way of um, taking over the usual process that we engage in when we, well, really when we do anything, but essentially the process by which we generate a view of reality, the view of the self, the view of the phenomenal world, and using that technology to invite us into a deeper, closer relationship with the truth of how we actually are. So the visualization is very simple, but it's a way of training ourselves to return to a more direct experience of how we actually are. And even though it feels somewhat artificial on some level because you're generating, using your imagination to generate an experience. And the more you work with visualization practice, the more it deepens into actual direct experience and kind of moves beyond the sort of imaginary realm and into a more direct experience realm. So give it a try. See how that goes. A little different than what we usually do on a Dharma Sunday. Um, Amanda, do you want to? I don't know if you want to highlight me. I think at the moment I'm still in my little square. I mean, for me, I like having everybody in view, but I'm not sure if people want want that or not.
Yeah, I have it on speaker view, so any folks who go to speaker view should be seeing just
Oh,
you.
good. Okay. And meanwhile, I get to see everybody, so that makes me happy. And if we can start, I'd like to start with with taking refuge. Excuse me. So if we could have the slide for refuge. And again, if I don't know if there's are people here who have not been part of a Dharma Sunday, but let's do the refuge practice together. And refuge practice is, in its essence, it's a reminder to us of how to turn our attention towards our own awakening and towards a reminding to ourselves of why we're actually here at this time, which is from the Buddhist perspective about accessing the parts of ourselves that are already harmonized with the truth of reality, with the way things actually are, and giving us an opportunity to tap into the source of our basic being as fuel, you could say, for being in the world. So when we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I like to think of those categories as um, reminders. So when we take refuge in the Buddha, it's a way of reminding ourselves that in our essence, we have this powerful capacity to be in an inseparable relationship with the living world, which for me these days really is what the Buddha, who the Buddha is, the living world. Um, and also a reminder, in our own, uh, of our own capacity to actualize that interconnectedness with everything that is alive and living in this world, and really with the whole energy of the cosmos. And when we take refuge in the Dharma, we're taking refuge in the teachings of that living world, the reminders that wisdom and compassion are a field in which we're already participating, a field that we can access when we begin to really listen into the truth of how things actually are. And then when we take refuge in the Sangha, we're taking refuge in the community of care that we are co-creating together every time we join each other in this field. So that's the way I like to think of refuge. And um, we'll recite the refuge prayer. We'll first do the Tibetan and then the English, and then we'll go into our practice from there. And after we recite the prayer, you're welcome to turn away from your screen if you like. It's up to you, and just follow along with the instructions for the meditation. So you might want to bring to mind, before we actually recite this prayer of refuge, bring to mind your field of benefactors or your spiritual field. Um, it could be a place in the living world that you love to be, where you feel held and seen and accepted. It could be a field of beings in your life with whom you feel connected and by whom you feel supported and cared for. Um, and that can change, it depends on what arises for you in the moment. So see who comes, see what comes, and then we'll recite our refuge prayer. Sanjay Chudam Sochi Chonam Changchu Pardu Dagni Chabsuchi Dagi Jinso Jipe Sonam Chi Drola Penchir Sanjay Drupal Show. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we go for refuge until enlightened. By the power of generosity and the other perfections, may we realize Buddhahood for the benefit of all. So now just take a moment to find a comfortable position, whatever that is for you this morning. Really giving your body permission to settle into its own place. And the body really knows how to hold us in the present moment. And if you can, having your spine upright but relaxed, your eyes can be open with a very soft and unfocused gaze. If you like, you can also have them closed, just to feel your way into your embodiment. Sometimes it can help to have the eyes closed in the beginning to really feel into the aliveness of the body. And we'll take a few deep breaths to drop down, relax down into the feeling of the body. So breathing in a long, deep inhale, feeling the belly expand. And then on the exhale, relaxing, releasing, and falling down into the womb of the body. And another long, deep inhale. And then using that exhale as a way to release tension, grasping, letting the thinking mind drop down into the feeling body. And another long, deep inhale. And another letting go, releasing, coming down to ground in the present moment. Feeling the groundedness and the stability of the body. And letting yourself just be right here. You might even just take stock of how am I right now? Give yourself permission to just feel into the corners of your being so that you just have a sense of how you are in this moment. Whenever you feel that energetic movement or impulse towards thought, see if you can just drop back down into the feeling of the body. Let the body hold you in the present moment. See how much you can relax with yourself and relax inside yourself. And now becoming aware of the feeling of the body breathing, the feeling of the breath as it flows into the body and out of the body. And letting your attention begin to merge with that feeling of the body breathing, flow of life force into you and out of you. With every in-breath, an activation of all the cells in your body awakening. And with every exhale, a relaxing into the space of your own awareness, the space of your environment. And see how much you can just be a body breathing. Now we're going to start the visualization part of our practice. So if your eyes are open and you want to close them, that's totally fine. And if you're used to visualizing with your eyes open, you can also just keep them open and gentle, unfocused gaze. At the crown of your head, so at the top of your head, just inside, just underneath the surface of your head, visualize a five-colored sphere, a sphere of rainbow-colored light, right inside the crown of your head. If you like, you can visualize it in the shape of a drop, like a drop of water, clear, translucent, glittering with the five colors of the rainbow. So yellow, red, blue, green, and white. And let your attention just rest with this sphere of rainbow colored light right inside the top of your head, right in your crown chakra. The sphere is sparkling, glowing, not solid, just a sparkling sphere of rainbow light. And as you hold your attention to this sphere of sparkling rainbow light, you can feel a sense of warmth and energy spreading through your body, as if that sphere were radiating warmth and radiating energy down through the body. And visualize that slowly the radiance of these five colored lights is beginning to extend, to radiate through your body, to your whole body seems to be filled with rainbow light. And the solidity of the body begins to feel as if it's dissolving into this translucent, vibrating field of rainbow light within the body. And then slowly, this massive rainbow light within the body begins to spread, radiating out from your body and beginning to fill your home or your immediate surroundings, the environment where you are. Rainbow light radiating out from all parts of your body and beginning to fill the space where you are. And that light continues to radiate outward, outside, into the forest, into the city, into the town, wherever you are. Rainbow light pouring out from your body, through your home, and out into the world, to the country around you, across the state, wherever you are, and even further, beginning to radiate out across the whole world. And out into the cosmos surrounding our world, everything transforming into rainbow light. See if you can hold your awareness to this vast, radiating, energetic sphere of rainbow light coming from your body. Stay with that for a few minutes. You can use your breath, each exhale, a way to feel into the radiating of that rainbow light out into the galaxy. Everything merged, dissolved into light. And now imagine that from the outer edges, the outer reaches, this expanse of rainbow light begins to gradually gather inward, flowing back towards the planet, flowing back through the planet, gathering all this rainbow light and all the beings that have dissolved into it, gathering that light back towards your own body until eventually that rainbow light dissolves back into your body. your body alive and vibrating with that rainbow light. And now your body begins to dissolve, starting with your feet, dissolving into light, moving up, that light gathering back slowly, dissolving the entire body back into that sphere of radiating rainbow light at the crown of your head. And that sphere, that drop of translucent, vibrating rainbow light slowly dissolves into a spacious openness, clear, translucent space. And just rest there. And whatever thoughts arise, dissolving into that open space, clear and bright. And then beginning to come back into the body. Might want to wiggle your fingers, your toes, letting your eyes open if they've been closed, and letting some light and color and coming back into our group. Thank you, everyone, for experimenting with me a little bit in visualization practice. And let's see, I think we'll take just about an 8-minute break. if we could come back at 11, that would be great. So I will see you in just a few minutes. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So this morning, I'm going to continue this series of teachings that I've been calling forest teachings, which are really a series of explorations on different ways to begin to merge ourselves back into unification with the living world. That there is this reality that happening that uh, we're having an ecological crisis, and that humanity is facing not only an environmental collapse, but let's hope a crisis of identity. And I mean that in the best possible way, that we're being invited into exploring other ways of being and identifying that are more in harmony with the truth of how things actually are. Because our modern culture is really grounded in this logic of separation, and we've forgotten our place within the living earth. And the forests and the rivers and the animals that once spoke to us as kin, and as a tribe, have become resources. And the human being seems to have come to experience itself as an observer, or an accumulator, a gatherer, rather than a participant in this unfolding of life. And yet I really feel that beneath all of this forgetting is the possibility of a much deeper remembering. That there is this deep intuition within us that consciousness and nature are not two, right? That the wisdom and healing we seek is already alive in the world around us. So I've been exploring these different ways of how practice can help us remember how to immerse ourselves into the energy of the living world as a way of reunifying and reorienting, and shifting our attitude and our way of being closer to the fabric of reality actually as it is, and not how we've projected and thought about it. So this morning I was going to continue that theme, and I'm kind of exploring this today by looking at the relationship between meditation and deep ecology. And so I'm going to suggest that by dissolving the subject object division that is at the root of both our ego and our ecological alienation, that certain kinds of practices, contemplative practices, such as open awareness, visualization practice, can help return us to this recognition of the living earth as the self-aware field of consciousness itself. And so to do that, I'm going to look both at deep ecology and sort of what is that for those of us who are not so familiar with that, and then also at meditation and a couple of different ways of understanding meditation. I'll say that. So just to start with, and maybe this is going to be very much review for everybody, but deep ecology, a lot of you probably know, was a term that's coined by the eco-philosopher Arne Naess. I'm never sure I'm pronouncing his name right. Arne Naess back in the 1970s, the early 1970s, and it emerged as a critique of this kind of shallow environmentalism, which is seeking to preserve nature only for human benefit rather than for its own sake. And deep ecology is an assertion that actually all life possesses intrinsic value and that humanity is just one strand in the web of the biosphere rather than some sort of center point, that this mistaken idea that somehow human beings are at the center not only of this world but really of the universe. And Nace envisioned an ecological self that transcends the isolated ego and expands to identify with the total field of life. And maybe more familiar to many of us is how Joanna Macy built on Nace's philosophy and developed it further through systems theory, Buddhist philosophy, the work that reconnects, and describing reality as a network of mutual causation and interbeing. And within all of those foci, to live ecologically then is beginning to remember that the boundaries of the self are infinitely permeable, so that the breath we breathe is the earth breathing through us. Um, and while deep ecology is, it really articulates this vision um, beautifully and of course philosophically, it does stop short of showing how such a consciousness can be realized, can be actualized in our experience. So, and I think Joanna Macy was aware of this also, that the missing link on some level is a contemplative practice that could lead to this lived and experiential realization of our embeddedness in the living world. So one way then you could say to practice deep ecology is to cultivate practices that would enable us to directly recognize ourselves as interdependent with the living world. And so that brings me to this notion of meditation. And I'm using meditation in a kind of broad sense here, um, because in the same way that deep ecology posits this movement away from the anthropocentrism that views the human being and our needs as the primary node of existence, meditation is a technology that is seeking to overcome that habitual self focus and egocentric myopic gaze on the small self and return us to a direct experience of our innate wholeness and interconnectedness. And in the same way, you could say that deep ecology is calling for an ecological self realization. Meditation is cultivating an experiential insight into our interbeing with the living world. And also, in the same way that deep ecology is offering guidance for ethical and political action, meditation can generate an inner transformation, I guess, maybe we could say, that supports outer change and outer activity. So let me say a little bit more about, the mechanisms in meditation that can help us with this return. Um, I think I may even have talked about this last month a little bit, but that meditation at its heart is an act of remembering, right? And all across many traditions, meditation in its root, the word in the root form, it means to become familiar with, um, or to return again and again to something. And in this case, really to return again and again to our innate wholeness. So meditation is a movement of homecoming. It's a movement from fragmentation to wholeness. And in meditative awareness, that, sorry, I've got something in my throat today. In meditative awareness, that habitual barrier between inner and outer that we tend to kind of operate with very unconsciously, like I'm here, I'm in here, this is me, and everything else is out there. So there's an inner and an outer. That starts to relax and dissolve when we're resting in meditative awareness, or at least it starts to thin, to be less solid than we sort of habitually go around with. And it's then possible that we start to experience our world as not so much a collection of objects, outer objects, but as an unfolding energy field of relationship and presence. So that shift, it's not just a psychological shift. I mean, it is a psychological shift, but it's not only a psychological shift, it's also an ontological shift. That when our thinking mind starts to quiet down, that we start to hear the world again. And anyone who's done retreat of any kind, a weekend, a week, you know that there some kind of sense of space and openness starts to happen with um, extended practice. And we can actually start to hear the world again. You go out in the middle of a retreat for a walk, you really seem to notice much more acutely like the movement of the wind or the feeling of the wind or the flow of water, the sound of water, maybe even feeling just the aliveness of the trees. Um, there's something that begins to release when we really practice meditation and let go and open us out. And I mean, of course, indigenous wisdom traditions, um, ecological poets, or a lot of poets actually, not just ecological ones, mystics, visionaries. There's this affirmation among all these different groups that the earth is alive, it's conscious, it's communicating. And really, it's the loss of that sense of felt communion that is um, really part of the real ecological tragedy of modernity. But when we practice, right, that conceptual noise of the ego slows down. We start to recover the capacity that we have to listen and to feel into the silence within us and into the voice of the more than human world. And through that listening, we begin to remember again who we really are. And some of you probably know these are these questions that I keep bringing forward, that who are we really? And why are we here? Why are we here at this moment on this planet? And as we can start to listen again to the voice of the living world, we really do start to remember more who we really are, that we're not some kind of isolated consciousness that is trapped inside this skin, right? But that we are an expression of a single living intelligence that manifests as this whole cosmos, right? We are an expression of that. So, one of the practices or meditations, you could say, in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition is this practice of recognizing, remembering, returning to what is known as rigpa in the Dzogchen tradition. And that's sometimes often translated as pristine awareness. And it's referring to the recognition of the nature of our heart mind, which is which has no fixed identity, and it's luminous, awake, clear, and it's spontaneously compassionate, this awareness. And it's not something that we have to produce through meditation, right? It's something that has always been present, right? It's the ground of experience itself. And meditation offers us the opportunity to relax enough to begin to notice it in every moment of our experience. And the more we can notice this sort of primordial um, background of awareness, then the boundary between self and world starts dissolving more and more. So, in order to recognize or realize Rigpa, we practice open awareness, which is something I think probably everyone's familiar with here, which is just a way of positioning ourselves in the center of the matrix of our experience. So, it's a way of allowing the fullness of one's experience to be 100% present without narrowing down into fixation on thoughts or emotions or objects in the field of experience. But it's a way of opening up and becoming fully present in a field of energy that is always moving and flowing. Um, so, open awareness, that's what we call this practice, but it's a way of positioning ourselves within that flow so that we can notice it, so that we can actually contact that sense of release of these barriers, these boundaries. And we're instructed in that practice to allow all the appearances of the inner realm, meaning our thoughts and our emotions and our ideas, and the seemingly outer environment, allowing all of these appearances to arise and dissolve without becoming attached to any of them or fixating or grasping at any of them, and without trying to push them away, without trying to eliminate anything. And as we do that, slowly, the sensory fields, so the field of your hearing and the field, your visual field, these all start to relax into a larger field of awareness, a larger field of energy. They lose their solidity and we start to be opened out into a vibratory, what I like to call anyway, a vibratory space of energy that is that really is the song of the living world, right? Releasing us into this uh, chorus, this song, the energetic vibratory space of the living world. And in that kind of a space, right, this kind of this sort of profound energetic space, there is no division anymore between outer and inner, between self and world, between preferences for this thing or that thing. We're immersed in a direct experience of this fluid, interconnected nature of our own being as inseparable from the living world. And, that might sound all kind of like, oh, spiritually abstract, perhaps. But actually, this notion of energetic embeddedness in the living world, it's not unique to Buddhism or spirituality in general. It's also explored in the scientific world. Sometimes people really like to know this kind of thing because it helps us go, oh, yeah, it must be true then. The paradigm of science is so strong in our um, educational realm. But in the field of biophysics, right, from that perspective, from the perspective of the field of biophysics, human beings are continuously exchanging energy with their surroundings. So our human body systems are emitting and receiving electromagnetic signals all the time. Um, our bodies themselves are producing measurable electromagnetic activity, heat, um, the firing of the nervous system, the movement of the neurons in the brain. And even though these fields of electromagnetic activity are not particularly, not dramatically strong, they're detectable. And so there are different kinds of instruments that have been developed that can measure the energy that our bodies are constantly exchanging with our environments. So in a way, this embodied being that we are is constantly in a dynamic, interactive relationship with the seemingly external environment. Um, and human beings are also responding physiologically to the environment, right? So environmental energy fields, our circadian rhythms are entrained by solar cycles and geomagnetic cues, geomagnetic forces. Our nervous systems are also influenced by things even like geomagnetic storms, of which apparently there have been quite a lot in the last couple of years. But different studies have showed these measurable effects in the human being um, from different kinds of geomagnetic activity, effects on our mood, effects on our sleep, effects even on the heart rate, um, the way the heart is beating. And plants and animals are also generating bioelectric fields, which they use for growth, navigation, communication. So it's like, I mean, the truth is that all living organisms operate within this same planetary electromagnetic environment. We are part of this energetic field that is this entire living world. And we are energetically regulated by the Earth's um, rhythms. So there's this energetic reciprocity between humans and environment. And in biophysics, then you could say that maybe the one conclusion, in a certain sense, is that all living systems are maintaining some kind of stasis by exchanging energy and information with their environments, and that this kind of interdependence it's universal. Human beings, we take in oxygen, we take in light, we take in food, we take in sensory information, we take in emotional signals, and we radiate out heat, breath, movement, sound, emotion. um, So, from that perspective, from this bioethics perspective, we're not separate in any way from the living world. We are a dynamic channel of all these natural energies, and this is mirrored. And now I'm going to go back into the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. This is mirrored more and more. Um, what's the word? More and more precisely through some of the yogic practices in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So there's a practice, a meditation practice that fosters a kind of direct experience of this energetic interconnectedness. And I mean, not only through beginning to relax and rest and contact our innate awareness, but also through what's known as in Tibetan Buddhism, the Tong Ra, which means the energy light body, Tong Ra. And, different Buddhist traditions describe that a little bit differently. But the idea here is that a human being is not a solid isolated entity, but this dynamic energetic field that is woven into the larger field of life, of the living world. Um, the energy light body refers to, you might say, one of the subtlest levels of our embodiment. And this is a practice that is explored in what are known as the 6 yogas of Naropa. Um, and it's a meditation practice in which one visualizes one's body as clear and transparent, like a rainbow or a crystal, without any solidity at all, which is what I had us do earlier. To just begin to visualize the body um, as this energetic field of rainbow light, which is visualization is a way of bringing us closer to how we actually are than our usual visualization of ourselves, which is as solid as this body of flesh and blood and density. And on one level, on the relative level, of course, that's true. That is one way that we experience our embodiment. But with practice and with refinement and with kind of a slow release of some of those habitual patterns of solidifying reality, which is what we're so habituated to doing, we begin to start to overcome some of those conceptual and physical and energetic obstacles to experiencing ourselves in the ultimate sense as we actually are, as these bodies of energy and light. So the energy light body is one way of describing this subtlest dimension of our human beingness. It's pointing us into this recognition that we are an energetic, luminous continuum that is interpenetrating physical form and expressing this interdependence of mind and body and environment. So when we sit in silence and stillness, and when we don't make any effort to do anything more than just simply observe our experience and resist being seduced by all the appearances, um, you know, again, that those layers of solidity and confusion and busyness start to fall away, and phenomena. And again, this is like if you've wondered why after you do a retreat, your world seems more vivid and more bright and clearer, almost like you adjusted your prescription and suddenly you can see things more clearly. That's because there's been a thinning of that attachment to solidity and a relaxing into this more luminous, bright, vivid field of energy that is everything that we experience. And then, of course, to do a visualization practice like what we did earlier is a way to help begin to train ourselves to remember that what we really are on the subtler levels of our being is this body of clear light, this vibratory field. And the energy of that clear light, which in Tibetan is sometimes called yeshe, yeshe ki lung, yeshe ki lung. Yeshe means wisdom or primordial wisdom. And then ki is just a connective, KYI. So yeshe, 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 ki, KYI, and then lung. Lung means wind, but it actually means energy. It means prana. So yeshe ki lung means the energy of primordial consciousness, the energy of the light body. And that begins to become more our operative uh, membrane. When we can rest in that, when we can actually contact that vibratory, alive dimension of our being, either that can resolve into further confusion, right? If we start to grasp at our experience, or it can resolve into a unification with the living world, with the energetic field of things as they are, with a recognition that that's who we really are. And that's a very non-dual place, a very non-dual, unified experience of being with reality as it is. With that kind of recognition, then it's very difficult to perceive the earth as something external, right? All phenomena, mountains, rivers, forests, everything, thoughts start to appear much more as what's called the play, the expression of awareness, of a radiance, of the radiance of awareness, as the radiance of awareness. That's probably the better way to say it. Start to appear as the radiance of awareness. Awareness is not static, it's not unmoving, it's a radiating field. And so then if I come back to this notion of deep ecology from this perspective, the ecological self that Nace is describing, it's not so much some kind of expanded identity, but it's the recognition that no separate identity has ever existed. That the practitioner recognizes that consciousness and nature share the same energetic ground. So the voice of the wind, the sound of the rain, the stillness of the mountains, they're not something other. They are awareness speaking itself into form. And to begin to recognize our nature as this radiating field of awareness is to awaken to the energy, the living energy of the world, right? To begin to hear the earth not in some sort of metaphorical way, but directly as a resonant vibratory expression of consciousness. So from this perspective, then, who we really are is not um, some kind of state of detachment, but it's a state of profound intimacy. Um, and when we remember who we really are here, this is giving, it naturally gives rise to compassion, to a spontaneous responsiveness to the awareness of suffering, because there is no separation there. And from that kind of a foundation, then ethical action can arise without coercion, right? Without effort, but spontaneously and naturally. And so caring for the earth, it's not some kind of moral imperative, but it's the effortless expression of who and what we already are. Always Thich Nhat Hanh expresses this so beautifully, right? He talks about when you see the cloud in a piece of paper, or you hear the forest in your breath, that then compassion becomes as natural as breathing. And to harm nature would be to harm oneself, because there really isn't any separation there. And these days, the contemporary eco-dharma movement is building upon that kind of insight, and proposing that true environmental action must be rooted in some kind of meditative awareness. if we can really remember our true nature as awareness inseparable from the living world, then environmental activism, it's not just a reaction to a crisis, but a form of participation in our planet's um, ongoing renewal. So I would like to just suggest that when we're remembering who we really are is inseparable from listening to the world, listening to the living world, and that the living earth is continuously offering us its wisdom through form and movement, through the patience of the mountains and the intertwining of the roots of the trees, the abundance of the rivers. Um, and the more still the mind can be and quiet, that wisdom is becoming more and more audible. And I'm sure many of you know that poem by Mary Oliver, where she asks, "What will you do with your one wild and precious life?" And maybe one good answer is listen. Not a metaphorical listening, but a participatory listening, right? That as we abide in awareness, perception itself becomes the earth's self recognition. And the world is meditating through us, remembering itself as consciousness. So, contemplative practice then is ecological practice, you know, walking gently on the earth, breathing mindfully, tending your garden, um, is all bearing witness to this living presence that is speaking through all beings. So, just to end then, meditation as deep ecology and practice is an invitation to recover this forgotten intimacy with the living world. And just as deep ecology is calling for a shift in consciousness, meditation, which is, ideally at least culminating in the realization of our innate awareness, this truth of who we really are, is accomplishing that shift in consciousness by bringing us into a direct realization that consciousness and the living world are one. So when we awaken to our innate awareness, our innate being, remembering who we really are, that is the earth aware of itself, right? The cosmos knowing itself through the human form. So, in that kind of a realization, we can really hear again the wisdom that is flowing through the rivers and the winds, through the silence of the stones and the breath, of the trees. And maybe the task of our time is not just to save this earth, right? But to remember that we have never really been separate from it, and listening to the living world is hearing our own deepest voice. So maybe I'll just stop with that and would love to hear from anybody who might want to share a thought or a question. And Amanda, do you want to
Josh.
call on folks? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Hi, Lama Liz. Thank you so much for leading this practice today. I actually had like a visualization while you were speaking um, about arisings and how things come from the emptiness. You have what's going on like on this planet, like it's kind of like this fire, right? Everything's burning, and the great sequoias, like when the fire is raging, send out these seeds, and then the seeds get spread out. And, just like we are, like you were saying, like we're the manifestation of awareness is, being that little flower or that little sapling that's like coming out of the ashes. It has that strength. It's tender. It's beautiful, and it's arising simultaneously as the fire. So yeah. So thank you so much for your teachings today. It really touched me. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you for that beautiful description of this kind of cyclical dissolution and creation that we're always involved in.
Anne?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Lama Liz. That was
I am.
really insightful and very complete. Um, I'm trying to reach into some question that I have, and I haven't formulated it yet, but it has something to do with the place of this um, deep listening and knowing who we truly are, um, with the really very disturbing events in the natural world and the connection with that. I'm in touch on a regular basis with Ukrainian people who are really on survival.
Right.
And I'm trying to make a connection. I have a feeling for it, but I can't quite make it conscious of how, in these times, which seems to be what's happening in the natural world, is the breakdown of the interconnectedness that gave rise to the Earth system that we're in now with
Mhm.
all living beings, and the effect of that on us as a species. I don't know if this makes sense, but there's a feeling of that.
Mhm.
I mean, in the life that I'm living right now, I can really, take in what you're saying. I've got the kind of life where I can pursue this as practice. But what's the effect on people who don't have that kind of life? What could we say about applying so beautifully what you're telling us to situations like that? Does this make sense or not?
Yeah, no, of course it makes sense. Absolutely. And it's 100% true that we're anyone here right now, we're unbelievably fortunate that we have the space and um the privilege to even engage with these
Mm,
ideas, no matter how universally applicable they may be to all human beings. There are millions of human beings on this planet, who
mhm,
could not access any of these practices or teaching because they don't have anything. They have nothing. There's no space other than bare survival in their right now in their face. And I mean, I'm very aware of that.
yeah, I'm
And
sure
at
you
the
are.
same time, it's I don't have an answer really for you other than to say that those who can
Mhm,
transform how we see our relationship with the world, I feel should feel
mhm,
even more of an imperative to go in that direction, because how are we going to support
yeah.
these situations if we're still immersed? I mean, support them in a way
Yeah.
that hopefully could be transformative if we're still immersed in,
Mm,
the emotional morass of anger and rage and
right.
despair and grief. And not that we're not going to be facing all those emotions, because we are. And that is part of
Mhm,
what the package of our lives at this moment is about. But if you have even a small bit of leisure to begin to genuinely
mhm,
or I should say maybe directly, uh, discover the truth of who we actually are, remember it, that can only help the larger field.
Yeah, because of
Um,
interconnectedness, interbeing.
right,
Right.
right.
That's very, of course, good remembering.
I mean, and it's not to say that we don't still engage in every way that we can to support those whose conditions are not anywhere near as
Mhm.
privileged as ours, because we have to do that. We absolutely have to do that. Um, yeah, I mean, this is the tragedy of the time we are living in, 100%. I really think. Thank you, Anne, so much. It's
Thank you
such
for
an
the
important,
remembering. Yeah, thank you
important
so much
question.
for, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sue.
Thank you. Can you hear
Hi,
me?
Sue. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's the main thing. And I realize, like in the subject program, I often struggle with what is this Rigpa thing? And why are we doing this in the midst of everything that's happening and blah, blah,
Right.
blah. This is, I think, a way deeper inroad for me.
Mm.
And I think I'm going to listen to this a bunch of times and do this meditation, but even though it was, speaking also to our intellect, it's the first time I feel it. And I happen to be looking at in a natural setting, but in my house. And it suddenly makes more sense in my
Mm.
system,
Mm.
what I wanted to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary.
Hey, Mary.
Hi, Liz. Nice to be here. Um, what you talked about brought up for me the teachings of Chogyam Trungpa about Dwala and vastness,
Mm.
and that for every sound, there's millions of sounds. For every sight, there's millions of sights. But that we do have to narrow it down because we can't, at least I can't, walk through life throwing things in my cart at the supermarket in this vast indeterminate field of awareness. But that what he talked about and what I have hung on to for all these years is that it narrows down to a single perception, but then that becomes a portal back out to the vastness. So that
Right.
if you notice just the way the rain leaves a mark on your windshield when you get back in the car from going to the supermarket, that can then be a reminder, a entryway, a portal to that. Um, Innumerable sights, sounds, feelings, touches. And I just feel like that's that's how we get by and live in a civilization that spends so much of its energy deadening that perception. So to just be
Mm.
very alert or open to the single perceptions that then um, become portals to the vastness.
Thank you so much for that, Mary. I had forgotten those teachings, and you're so right. That is just like a beautiful reminder and also instruction
Yep.
in, a way to kind of continuously flow back and forth across this
Right.
bridge of separation,
Right.
because we do have to go to the grocery store. We do have to narrow down to some extent here and there. And we need to remember that we can always expand
Yep.
and dissolve.
Yep. That
And
magic of single perceptions.
exactly. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much. I might want
You're
to talk to
welcome.
you more about that, actually.
Okay. Anytime. Let's
Okay.
let's let's make a date.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Lama Liz.
You're welcome.
I am wondering, from your experience with shamanic and indigenous people's practices in this vein, you have any recommendations for resources or sort of expanding this exploration with those approaches?
Hmm. I mean, I'm not an expert, in any way in shamanic traditions, or shamanic practices for that matter. I have a little bit of experience there. And I think what I would probably want to say at the moment is just that in my own experience, working with different, and for me, it's been, there's shamanic practice, many shamanic traditions that don't necessarily work with um, mind expanding or consciousness expanding plants. In the traditions that I practiced in, I have been working with those plants. And I mean, it's really almost like a duh, like it's just a reminder on such a profound level that actually what I was just describing is really the bedrock of those traditions, that one is being returned, or at least invited to return to this kind of a awareness of our interconnectedness, on a non-conceptual level, on a very deep experiential level. And there's a lot of noise that can get involved in that because we have a lot of karmic confusion and conditioning that's in the way, which is why meditation practice offers a more sustained um, approach to the same kind of recognition. Um, if one just gets involved in various ceremonial contexts, you go to the ceremony, you may have that kind of a recognition and awakening, and yet you need some way to sustain that. Just like with the philosophy of deep ecology, it's the ideas themselves are just absolutely beautiful, but how do you do that? And the how, at least in my experience in the work that I've been doing in shamanic cultures, is through the plants and their generosity and their energetic fields. Um, Again, though, I'm not a deeply trained shamanic practitioner, much as I might like to be. I've not had the time to do that kind of sustained study and practice. So I think I'll stop there before I say something that um, isn't accurate or true about that. But thank you for the question, and something I'm very interested in.
And Vicky.
Hi, hi, Lama Liz, and
Hi, Vicky.
I thank you for an amazing, beautiful experience today. My question is, in this journey beyond separateness, how do you see our beloved pets as a part of that journey? They're very important in my life, and I spend hours in some kind of open-heartedness, connection, love. Anyway, I'm curious about that role as part of nature.
Oh yeah. I mean, what a great example of, we can't talk, of course we do talk to our pets, but they can't talk back to us in words, but they're talking back to us all the time in energy. And, I don't at the moment have a pet. I'm fantasizing all the time about dogs because I love dogs. But, whenever I encounter a friend with a dog or somebody with a dog, I just love this. I love to just get in this little energetic field of exchange with the dog because it makes me so happy. And to me, there's such a palpable channel there or portal there for accessing exactly what we've been talking about today. That, the offering that is there from a pet to its owner is such a act of ongoing generosity in every moment, and an invitation all the time to come commune with me here, come commune with me here in this space of interconnectedness. I mean, I don't know. I just that feels like a good heavens, like such a fabulous assist to, the deeper, fuller, ongoing recognition of our lack of separation. So I'd say, yeah, 100%. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you. Karen.
Thank you, Lama Les. The comment about, how do we operate in our relative sense of comfort compared to what's happening in war zones and in famine zones and other places in the world where circumstances are more dire. And at the same time, we have this, existential division in our way of being every day. It makes me think about this gap between kind of tactical compassion and strategic compassion, or our ability as humans to rise to the occasion, in war, which is really like the opposite of the recognition of interdependence. We still see people as humans rising to the occasion to take care of each other. And that's brought forth from this deep need and this kind of spontaneous need. But that just makes it more obvious, this gap between this spontaneous ability to be human and intimate with each other and be vulnerable in dire circumstances versus our day-to-day consumption and being busy and involved in all the trappings of our capitalist society. So this gap between those two, I think there's a correlation into how we relate to nature. Think of the number of people who stop at a brilliant sunset, because it's there in your face and it catches your attention, just like grabbing someone out of the fire might bring up that nature of compassion in a tactical way. But being able to look, at, a piece of moss or like a dewdrop on a leaf in the same way as that sunset is that same type of gap. So I'm just thinking about, like, how do we continue in our practice to help bring those two pieces together, like fill that gap. Just if you could say something about how we look at nature, the example of nature to do that.
I mean, some part of an answer to that would have to be even just the way you laid that out, the bringing it into our awareness more and more, that there is this gap there. And because I think it's probably the case that many people don't even recognize that's some kind of a gap at all. And so, some beginning there to have a recognition of that is one way to start to close the gap. And I think maybe what Mary was talking about with this beginning to hone in more on attention to how I don't know what we would want to call it, the singular, the particular, um, is itself an opening into the universal or the vastness. That there is no place anywhere here where there is actually a gap. It's just the habitual mind's construction of these separations that leads us into that belief. I'm not 100% sure I'm responding to what you're asking. And I wonder if, Karen, can you just, what would you say? What would you offer as an answer to your own question?
Well, I think in some ways, and what I was saying was an answer to the question, and that,
Yeah.
you know, this recognition that our everyday way of being needs to bring that recognition of the interdependence and the intimacy, and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable with each other is the way that that happens.
Mhm.
Not just when there's an emergency,
Right.
but as we're walking down the street together, as we're meeting someone new at a crosswalk, as we're walking through the grocery store, you know, we need to bring that same type of attention as to how we can come together.
Mm.
And to realize that there is no separation. Like you said, there's this habitual busyness. People need to protect and see risk, and you know, that our habits that separate each other are really what is filling this gap, rather than the sense that there is no gap, there's connection.
Right. Right.
The illusion of the gap.
The illusion of the gap. Yes. I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much. We have one more raised hand from Chris. Before I ask him to unmute, though, I am going to do a quick Donna talk. I'm dropping the donate link in the chat. Thank you all for being here and for making it here despite the hiccups at the beginning. And we appreciate your practice so much as Donna and generosity to this community. But if you feel so moved to also provide a financial support, or if you'd like to become a member of Natural Dharma Fellowship, all of that can be done at that link in the chat. And then Chris.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I have so much that I'd like to say, and there's no time. And I'm Liz, you and I will talk about this. I mean, just so many things. Primary is how wonderful you are, my dear, and how your teaching continues to just grow and expand and express things which are so valuable for our world today. But I wanted to respond to the question about indigenous plant medicine practices. I had a couple of thoughts that came into my head for books. These are books by Westerners, but I think they give good expression to some of these ideas, and they might be valuable. I put them in the chat. I typed in The Cosmic Serpent by Jeremy Narby, an anthropologist who worked in Amazonas. And it also combines his thoughts about how this relates to science, because he's very much a scientist. I mean, this is an older book for him. Oh yeah, I shared it with Amanda, but now she's sharing it with the rest of you. There's also a couple of books by Rachel Harris, Listening to Ayahuasca and Swimming in the Sacred. Both are books that she wrote through extensive her own work with ayahuasca, but also many interviews with practitioners in the United States, participants and curanderas working in the underground psychedelic scene. That both of them I found very profound in reading them, and have been back into them multiple times since reading them initially. So I wanted to just share those as avenues for people if they wish to explore this. So thank you and many blessings.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. And in spite of the hiccups, as we said, thank you for checking your emails and joining. And I think we'll dedicate the merit to end. And hopefully, I'll see you again next month at the end of the month. So,
Would you like to use the bodhicitta dedication or the Dharma dedication?
oh, let's do the Eco Dharma dedication. That sounds like a good one for today. Am I the only one not seeing this? Oh, there we go. Okay. Yes, let's do this one. That's perfect. This is more than one page, isn't it, Amanda? Just so that everybody knows that. Or not? Is it just one page? Oh, that's the vow. Okay, right. No, so just one page. All right, everyone, let's just take a minute before we recite this together to send out some of that energy of love and gratitude into the world. We're so blessed to be in the position that we are in and have the opportunity to be of benefit in this way. May all places be held sacred. May all beings be cherished. May all wounds to forests, rivers, deserts, oceans, all wounds to Mother Earth be lovingly restored to bountiful health. May all beings everywhere delight in whale song, bird song, and blue sky. May all beings abide in peace and well-being, awaken and be free. Thank you everyone so much, and I look forward to seeing you next time.